Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
And this is the Old Timers meeting. My sobriety date is April 19th, 1982. I almost qualify. And I want to thank Lisa, who's not here today, but Lisa asked me if I'd chair the meeting, and we're doing it in the format. She asked me, and I said, how do you want me to do this? And she said, however you want. That's a bad thing to tell an alcoholic, isn't it? And anyway, so I said, well, I'll do it the same way we did it at the state convention, which is we have a panel, and they'll speak each 10 minutes each or so, and then we'll take any questions with time we have left. So that's where it's going to go. But I'm really grateful to be here and grateful that I was asked to do this. And let's begin this meeting with a moment of silence, and we'll follow that with the Serenity Prayer, please. Thank you. The Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Okay. I'm going to start with the reading, but the reading today is not from the big book. It's from Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. And to just set it up a minute, I wanted to tell a little bit about Dr. Bob. And he was born in 1879, and he met Bill on May 12th, 1935. He was 56 years old when he met him. And he got sober on June 10th in 1935. That was, he met Bill in May, got sober in June. And he died in November 16th, 1950, with 15 years sober. And his last talk was at the International Convention, first one in Cleveland, Ohio, in 1950. And his last talk is on the page 338 of Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers, if you want to read that. But I've asked Ann to do our reading today, and there are excerpts from that book. Ann?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ann P. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is April 13th, 1996. For that, I'm truly grateful. Don't have enough time to actually be sharing at this Old Timers meeting, so I am very honored to be asked to read a little bit of excerpt from Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. I'm on the page 67, if anyone has that book and would like to follow along at the middle of the page, and then I'm going to skip down to the bottom of that page and read on after that. What actually happened between the two men? One of the shortest and most appealing versions came from Dr. Bob's old schoolmate, Arba J. Irvin, who at least gave proper recognition to what was to become AA's unofficial beverage, coffee, then selling at 15 cents a pound. Wow. The Oxford group had a program, in quotations. Henrietta had told him, "You must not touch one drop of alcohol." Obviously, Bill brought something new, himself. What did he say to Dr. Bob that hadn't already been said? How important were the words? How important compared to the fact that it was one alcoholic talking to another? No one can say precisely. Indeed, Dr. Bob and Bill themselves placed slightly different emphasis on factors involved. In AA Comes of Age, written about 20 years later, after Bill had analyzed the event in the light of subsequent experience, he said that he went very slowly on the fireworks of religious experience. First, he talked about his own case until Bob got a good identification with me. He said that in quotations. Then, as Dr. William D. Silkworth had urged, Bill hammered home the physical aspects of the disease. the verdict of inedible annihilation. This, Bill felt, brought about in Dr. Bob an ego deflation that triggered him into a new life. Describing their talk as a completely mutual thing, Bill said, "I had quit preaching. I knew that I needed this alcoholic as much as he needed me, and this was it. And this mutual give and take is at the very heart of all AA's 12-step work today," end quotation. In Alcoholics Anonymous, published almost exactly 4 years after their first meeting, Dr. Bob noted that Bill, in quotation, was a man who had been cured by the very means I had been trying to employ. That is to say, the spiritual approach. He gave me information about the subject of alcoholism, which was undoubtedly helpful. Of far more importance, he continued, was the fact that he was the first living human with whom I had ever talked who knew what he was talking about in regard to alcoholism from actual experience. In other words, he talked my language. He knew all the answers, and certainly not because he had picked them up in his reading. As Bill put it, the spark was struck. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. And I thought that that was an important start to this meeting because these people that are on the Old Timers panel, I hope that they'll share something, even that's something that might be helpful to a newcomer. And I always like to think of myself, at least at times, as a newcomer. And so the format today for our long-timers is Ronnie's going to introduce us and start out, then Mike, then Billy, Ralph, and Sally. And so you'll meet them as we go along. Ronnie?
My name's Ronnie, and I'm an alcoholic. God, it's a privilege and honor to be up here on the stage with these people. There was an old saying in AA when I first got sober, it says, there's nothing, anybody can be an old-timer, just don't drink and don't die. And that's how it works. That's how it works. I want to touch a little bit at the meeting that I went to and the meeting that I got sober in. I got sober in a little town, Hearne, Texas. It's about 20 miles south of here. And at that time, we only had about 4 or 5 regular members. And everybody knew everybody's story. Everybody knew it. If someone was telling their story and they said, yeah, I wrecked that Pontiac, no, that was an Oldsmobile you was driving, don't you remember? we would literally correct everybody's story because we heard it so many damn times. But I got sober. I got sober doing that. And I look back there and I see Andy. I was there when Andy first came in the door. And he fought it. And he fought this program. He fought it. And we were taking bets that he wasn't going to make it, but he fooled us all. He made it. We would run out of chips at the group and go by his house and get chips to get out. That's a joke. I'm not serious. I'm joking on that now. What I want to talk about is just a little bit is about the old timers in AA. The guys that were there, the people that were there when I got here. And this is so important to me. They played a very important part of my recovery. These are the guys that held the roof, kept the door open, kept the lights burning until I got there. And they welcomed me with open arms. They loved me when I couldn't love myself. And that's very, very important because I owe an obligation to those old-timers that were there. Now it's my turn. I'm going to say this real quick. Has anybody lately been in a meeting and look around the room and you're the oldest member in that room? When that first happened to me, now that's scary. It really is, because I said, God almighty, who's in charge, you know? Where's my leaders? Where's my teachers? And I was the oldest person in the room, and I thought, well, we're in a world of hurt now. We really are. It's people like Dave Roque, Dovey Hanson, Don Foster, Bill Ford. Now, I know there's other people that I can't think of right now that were there when I came in. These are the ones who loved me and said, Ronnie, sit down and be quiet. when they called on me, I wanted to talk like a lawyer, really impress everybody. At my first, I guess I'm the only one that done this. At my first meeting in Alcoholics Anonymous, I wore my starched Levi's, my anteater boots, starched shirt, and had a hubcap for a belt buckle. It was comical. It really, really was. And I'm sitting in that room, and I think I can help these people. I really can. Then my second thought was, I'm glad they got them all in one place where we can watch them. But that's part of the past now. And I owe an obligation to these old-timers that were here before me. Now it's my turn to do this. As it was read a while ago, we know exactly what that new person is feeling sitting in that chair the first time they come in that room. And they're sitting there trying to turn a styrofoam cup inside out. We know what they're thinking. We know what they're thinking. Because we've all been in that chair. And I believe this, and I believe it strongly. We can help. We can help when nobody else can help because we understand. We're dealing with a disease that kills you. It literally kills you. It'll put you in the ground. It'll put you in the ground quick. When I reached out for Alcoholics Anonymous, there in Hearn, I reached out to a man that I drank with. And he had 2 years. And I wanted what this man had. I wanted what he had. And I did everything that this man did, hoping to get what he had. Hell, he was my higher power for a good while. He really was. Thank God he didn't get drunk. But something happened. He got 25 years and went back out and worked on his story some more. And that's so, so sad, and he's still out there today doing it. So sad. Talk to him, say, come on. We'll do it together. We'll do it together. You're not by yourself. Don't have a problem. I'm okay. Now that's this disease. That's what it does to us. See, it's doing push-ups as we sit in this room right here today, waiting for us to slip up, waiting for us to think. There's nobody out here on I-10. I'm going to stop and get a pint. It's me by myself. Then after a while, we can justify it because nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to know. The secret is that I'll know. Now, I'm going to be quiet. We've got a lot of good speakers up here, and thank you all very much.
Hi, my name is Mike. I'm an alcoholic. I always thought whenever I'd get sober a long time, I'd have all the answers. And but I think back of my life experience. They say that as people get older, they acquire wisdom. And that's not true. Some people just get old. And and I feel that way sometimes. It's like I've been here a while. I'm supposed to have all the answers, and I don't. I'm one of the guys here. Now I can give you I got a lot of answers. I got some, but I need to go to meetings, not only to help other people, to help myself. I dropped by meetings the other day that I don't typically go to. I don't go there but once every 6 months or so at noon or something, because I got kind of screwy that morning. And I went in for last 20 minutes of the meeting and walked out feeling fine. Just because you've been sober a long time doesn't mean that you got everything going right in your life. But I don't beat myself up. Also because I got a lot of things right going. It's like I think sometimes we take pride sometimes. Well, I ain't got nothing going over here, but I'm sober today. This sort of stuff. But no, heck no. I'm doing a lot of things right, and I tend to do. But I learned it here, but I have to keep coming. I go to the sober school and I forget. I forget all the stuff that sometimes I forget that I'm not the most important guy in Walker County. And there's just things that I have to come back to be reminded of. And so I had the experience that he was talking about of the day that I got my 30-day chip, there was I think he was just, I thought he was old as God when he came in, probably my age now, came in and got a desire chip. And everybody was gasping because this guy was Mr. AA. I never saw, he'd been sober over 20 years and he was out drinking. And so I saw that poor old man come in and out and pick up 30-day chip, desire chip, 2-month chip, and he died drunk in a hotel room. And it reinforced to me that this is serious business. I think that we come here, we have a good time. If you don't have a good time coming here, a lot of times there's something wrong. This is a good place to enjoy yourself. But what we do is serious. This is serious business. A lot of people tell you that drinking never did anything for them. That, drinking was horrible and all this kind of stuff. I didn't have that experience. I'd never had a drink at all until I was 18 years old. And I went to a kicker bar one night and drank. The first time I was there, I could drink more than other people. And I wanted to drink more than other people. But it freed me from all sorts of things. I was always just terminally shy. It was terrible. And I had shy and insecure and all kinds of stuff. Alcohol did good things for me. It helped me to succeed in places where I could never succeed before. And I'm telling you the truth. You'd be looking at one of the world's oldest virgins here if it hadn't been for alcohol. And and there's a lot of other things I just couldn't do in my life. I just couldn't. But with alcohol, I could. But that didn't last that long. That period, that golden period, that even when it was golden, there were times when something would slip up and say, whoops, this is not right, And towards the end, I drank and I was sick and miserable all the time. I tried everything I could. I thought I was trying to stay sober, when I was drinking. The reality is I was trying to stay reasonably drunk, No one wants to be, knee walking, snot slinging drunk. That's no fun at all. But you reach that point where everything just sort of feels away and you're feeling all right. That's a great feeling, And if I could still do that, I'd still be drinking. Okay? My drinking didn't work anymore, but I couldn't stop drinking. I couldn't, and I knew I was alcoholic. I knew I was alcoholic for a long time. I'd take these little tests and things, and I knew I was alcoholic. But I kept thinking I was going to find some way to beat it. There's going to be some way I can find that I'm going to be able to control and enjoy my drinking. And it wasn't until I reached the point where that ceased to be an answer. I knew I couldn't, that I was ready to do anything. And there's a fellow, a pathologist, we called him Quincy back then, who... a friend of my wife's, and he preceded me in this program by a few months. And I saw him just a few months after he'd stopped drinking. He just sort of dropped out of sight. I didn't know what happened to him. And the minute he walked into the room, I knew there was something different about him. And whatever it was attractive. And I sat down and talked to him, and he told me that he had stopped drinking. I was not impressed. Okay, I'd had my experience stopping drinking, and it was terrible. I hated every minute of it. And he told me that there was hope. And he never mentioned a word about my drinking. All he did was talk about his. And I knew that night that I talked to him, I was going to get sober. But I knew it wasn't going to be that night. And I drank about another 2 months. And one day I'd had it. And I made it to AA, and I went to the first meeting. And what Ronnie said, I think, is that I went to my first meeting, and it seemed to me for the first time in my life that people spoke my language. I understood what they were saying, and they understood what I was saying. And the other thing that I can remember is they asked me to come back. Once upon a time, I'd been sort of a popular guy, but people were not in a habit of asking me back anymore. And that meant something to me. I came to this program to get less miserable. I could not conceive of a life without alcohol that was going to be anything but just less miserable. And you know something? I got less miserable right away. I think people, for the most part, when they go to AA, they find what they're looking for. If they're lucky, they find something else. And that's what I did over a period of time. I found a new life. I wanted to sort of also echo something Ronnie was saying. I was just talking to someone today about my very first 12-step call. And I was hanging around the AA club, and Beverly got a call, and she didn't have another woman to go, and so she grabbed me as a very poor last choice, you know. And so I'm going along here in this 12-step call, and there was a woman that she was 12 steps calling. It was a revelation to me. I had forgotten how bad it was. It's been 3 months, and I've forgotten how bad it was. She stank and was always miserable and crying. It was just awful. I hated it. But I also had the experience of that for the first time in my life, I was giving back. I was giving back what had been given to me. And it dawned on me, I was thinking, you know, I believe this crap. I believe it, you know. And it was a real experience. I also had something that happened that I think I'll share it with you. You may make whatever you want to with it. The woman was, you know, in between bouts of crying, she asked us how long we'd been sober. And Beverly said, I've been sober 15 years. And I said, I've been sober 3 months. She said, how did you do it? You know, how did you stay sober 3 months? And so for the new people out here, don't think just because that you're new that you don't have anything to offer. There's going to be people that you can reach that we can't, because the pain is not as fresh. And we old timers, you know, there are going to be people who you can help that I can't. There's a place for everybody in this program, and and I hope you have the experience that I have. That this program was the best thing that ever happened to me, and it was the last place in the world I wanted to go. Thanks.
Billy, it's your turn. Move your mic. And don't forget to tell your sobriety date. I was going to mention these guys.
All right. I'm Billy Stewart, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi, everybody. And one day at a time, I haven't had a drink since October 2nd, 1960. And and for this, I am truly grateful. I wake up every day and think that the higher power has given me another day to stay sober. And I didn't used to think that. I used to wake up and think, where am I going to get a drink today? I came into AA when I was 27 years old in 1949, and stayed, I won't say sober, but I stayed dry for about 15 months, and then I got back into the booze. After that, I was in and out. I did have nearly 3 years of not drinking, but got back to drinking and drank on and off until 1960, when I was able to put a lot of days together of staying sober. And for this, as I say, I'm truly grateful. When I was first in AA, I thought it was wonderful, and even though I wanted to drink, I didn't drink, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't get this back once I got back into the booze. When I came back into AA in 1960, I had had 10 days of not drinking, and then my family shipped me off to the state hospital for the third time, and I went back in on October the 12th, which was Columbus Day, and it was my, it was the anniversary of the third time I'd been to the hospital. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I was over there for 65 days, and when I got out, it was in December of 1960, and went home. I didn't know how I was going to get home to start with. The doctor had called me in, and he said, "I'm going to release you." And then he asked, I said, "I'm so glad I've missed my daughter." And he said, "Say, Billy, what kind of mother are you?" Well, that was the last thing I ever expected somebody to ask me, and I thought, I said, mediocre at best, but I was determined when I got out that I was going to be a better mother, and that is one of the main reasons that I've stayed sober all this time. I have a daughter. Her name is Stewart, and she's in the program. She's got 25 years of sobriety now. My husband was an alcoholic, and he died of alcoholism. But thank God, Stewart was a better learner than he was, and she was a better learner than I, because she got sober a lot quicker than I, and has stayed sober on her first entrance into this program. I have, when my husband and I were having problems back in 1960, still having problems. We married in 1942, and we were still having problems in 1960. And I couldn't get him to leave, and so I left. And I was census that year, and there was a little house down a block from our house, and I moved into that house, and that was the beginning. Not when I got sober right then, but it was 2 or 3 months later that I got sober, and I always thought that my drinking was because of my mother and my husband, that if they would just leave me alone, I would be able to drink and handle it. However, I knew that I was an alcoholic, but I was going to be the exception that proved the rule. I was going to be able to handle it, but I was not able to handle it. And I know if I drank today, I would not be able to handle it. And so you people and people like you have helped me to stay sober all this time, and I am grateful. Thank you.
I have a little request. I've known Billy for 25 or more years, and I lived over here for a time, and that's when I first met Billy. And she has lots of stories, so if you haven't talked to her, you probably need to sit down and talk to her sometime. But I always laugh. Said that she went to the state hospital 3 times, and one time on the way home, something happened. And I wanted you to tell that little story, because I think it's so funny. You know which one?
Which one?
The one where the doctor asked you how far you got?
Oh, yes, when I went back to the hospital, in 1960, the doctor said, how long did you go without a drink before you had to come back? And I said, oh, about 50 miles. Which was the truth. And I wasn't trying to be funny. And that really irked all those doctors. And I thought, well, God, what did they want me to say? But it's the only time I ever left a sobering up place and drank on the way home, because I'd been in many places to sober up besides the state hospital. But that was the only time I ever drank on the way home.
Thanks. I love that story because I'd never heard anybody say that before. Anyway, the next person is, let's see, Ralph.
My name is Ralph, and I am an alcoholic. And by the grace of God and making meetings like this and associating with fine folks just like you here today, I've been sober since March the 13th of 77. And for that, I'm truly, truly grateful. I appreciate being asked to come up here and share for a few minutes. But I feel kind of like the baby up here, I tell you what, and everything with all the sobriety that's here, and it's great to see that. When I sobered up, I remember that I was very blessed because some of the I called them old timers back then, but they were short timers, really 15, 20 years, that kind of stuff. But when I sobered up back then, they took me under their wing. Some of them did, and my first sponsor, he had 15 years, and then my second sponsor had 18 years, but they brought me into their circle. And back then we used to say, stick with the winners, and that's what they did. When I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I had some friends in AA that became my friends, and those were the ones that'd been around a while, and they kind of took me under their wing and began to help me, and I'm grateful for those old timers that were here when I came in, that were there to be able to show me and explain to me and share with me the beauty of this program. God, I've heard some really good things, and I thank y'all for sharing those things because they brought back some memories of mine as well. When I came into the program, I'm sure just like you, I just didn't wake up one day and go, oh, I don't have anything else to do. I think I'll go to Alcoholics Anonymous. I got drove in here because my uncle, who I was living with, I lived with my aunt and uncle when I was about 15. They're the ones who got the really brunt of my alcoholism. I was living with them because my mother was alcoholic. I had started drinking when I was 11 years old. My mother taught me how to drink Seagram 7 out of a shot glass when I was 11 years old. And I'm sure you can relate with this. I remember one day she was in the kitchen, and I walked in there and I seen her drinking. And my mom had drank for as long as I remembered. And I said, I want to drink like you do, And she had a shot glass, and she said, well, come here, I'm going to, and she did. And I remember at 11 years old, when I took that shot of whiskey and threw it down, and it burned as it went down, and as I was going in, and when it hit my stomach, it just exploded. And what happened? You know what happened, don't you? That feeling went all over me, and it just kind of came up from my toes all the way up, and I had a new best friend, And fortunately, there was always a good supply of alcohol around my house. That happens when you got an alcoholic parent and everything. And so I started drinking from when I was young. I remember blacking out and getting drunk and throwing up and all that kind of fun stuff, When most kids at 11 years old are thinking about, baseball and all that kind of stuff, I was drinking and getting drunk and throwing up and all that kind of good stuff. And so I got an early start at it. By the time I was 14, though, I was out of control, and my mother couldn't take care of me, and I was getting in trouble with the truant officers, and I wasn't going to school and things like that, and she had to let some other people take care of me. And the reason I came back to that is to share with you is that, my aunt and uncle were the ones that kind of took the brunt of all of that because they raised me. But when I was 21 years old, shortly after my 21st birthday, which was in February, my uncle came into the room one day and he told me, he said, and my nickname was Red, he called me Red, he said, Red, he said, you're going to have to leave. And I knew what that meant because I had heard him say that many times before, you know. And so I told him, oh, okay, I'm going to quit drinking and I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to, you know, because I'd been kicked out of a junior college. Anybody been kicked out of a junior college? Yeah, I got kicked out of a junior college because, you know, I wouldn't finish the papers. So, you know, you start out a semester and if you don't finish papers and you don't drop the class, they give you Fs. That's what they do, you know, and everything. So I had all these Fs on my college transcripts later on. But he came to me and he said, you're going to have to leave. He said, and with tears streaming down his face, I remember, and I'd never seen the man cry in a day in my life. And he said, me and your aunt just can't stand to see you killing yourself anymore. You're going to have to do something. And what I did was like any good alcoholic. I said, sure, I'll get help, you know. And but that was Saturday night, and a friend of mine was having his birthday party at the Nestdale Club down the road, and so I was going to go with him. And I went out that night and with him, and I remember as we was coming back that night, I looked. We talked about that moment of clarity, and I just had that moment of clarity, and it was like God was speaking to me. I got to do something. This just isn't right. And March the 13th, I went to the Wheelhouse in Deer Park, Texas, and you know, it's really funny how God puts people in our lives. I can't tell you what that speaker said, but all I can tell you is that I connected with his story, and that's one of the great miracles that we have in AA. That just by sharing our experience, strength, and hope, we can touch people that other people have long time given up on because they just couldn't help them anymore. Didn't know what to say. You know, my uncle had given up, and there's nothing he could say to anymore. He'd thrown his hands up. But that man that in sitting in that meeting that day in Alcoholics Anonymous, he poured out his heart, and at that time, you know, I could identify. I knew what he was talking about. And he talked about this program and about how it changed his life. You know, and I remember as I got up that day, they had, of course, asked us to come up and take a desire chip. Anybody had a desire, and I went up there and I started to take that desire chip, and I started crying, you know, because it was like a release. All of that pain, all that misery, everything that over those last years, sitting in that meeting, it was like I had finally found hope. You ever know that? I'd given up hope. I tell people that, but before I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, my only hope was that I'd die young. And it really was. That was about the only hope I had and everything. And that day, sitting in that meeting, I heard a man share about the things in his life, and he talked about this God of his understanding, and he talked about how coming to Alcoholics Anonymous had changed his life, and that how wonderful his life was. And I said, I got to have some of that. And when I started to leave that day, a man came up to me and after the meeting, and you heard him talk about it here earlier. But he said something to me that I remember as clear as day. He said, Ralph, you don't ever have to hurt like that again. And we love you, and we want you to come back. And I hadn't had anybody tell me that in a long time, you know. And what happened was, I saw the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous working in that man's life that night. And it gave me hope that just maybe I too could have what they had. And I went back to that Wheelhouse that next day, and I checked in, and I stayed there and started, and have been sober by the grace of God ever since, you know. And I learned some valuable lessons there, you know. One of the things, and I thought about people, Jean was kind of, when she asked me to come up here, you know, she said, well, I'll give you about 10 minutes. And I'm going, really? 10 minutes? You know, I can't even introduce myself mostly in 10 minutes, but that's okay. But some lessons I just want to share with you that I learned that day and everything is that, you know, today I make it a habit of talking to new people when I see them. You know, it was so important for me that day when those people came up to me, because I tell you what, I could have very easily turned around and walked out that doors of Alcoholics Anonymous that day and went back out and got a drink again. But that man took the time to stop and talk to me and share with me the love and the hope of this program. And you heard him talking about the obligation that we have, the accountability that we have. And for me, I believe that that's one of the greatest miracles that we have, is that ability for us to share our experience, strength, and hope with another person and be able to impact somebody's life like nobody else can. The other thing I learned is service work. I stayed at that halfway house for over 6 months, and what they did as soon as I was sober, they got me busy working with new guys. Now, I couldn't work them through the steps because I hadn't learned the steps yet. But my first job there at that wheelhouse was that I worked in the sick room. And if you haven't ever worked in a sick room in a halfway house, you know, that's fun. I'm telling you. I learned all about all the good, you know, the DTs and the throwing up and the shakes and everything else, you know, and everything. And but I didn't share that, but I knew about that. I'd started having alcoholic convulsions when I was 14 years old, so I'd already started having a lot of problems with alcohol long before I came into into Alcoholics Anonymous. But I learned those lessons about giving back and about sharing, you know. And one of the things that I do today is that I try to carry the message of recovery into the prison system. And that's what I've met some of my friends that are in here tonight, that are here today. I've met them through us volunteering and going into the prison system and taking meetings into the prison system. And some of them I've met while they're there, and they're out today, you know, in this program and doing well. And every time I get to see that, it just reinforces to me what a great God that we have. One of the first things I learned, you know, when you go into Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't remember a whole lot of stuff at first, but there was one thing they said that night that I did remember. And they said that there is one who has all power, and that one is God. May you find him now. And that has been kind of that one sentence that I hung on for so long early in this program, is because I knew that I needed help and I didn't know what it was. And they told me that night when I go home to pray and thank God for keeping me sober. And they told me the next morning when I got up to get on my knees and to thank him and ask him to help me keep sober again today. And I'm going to share this prayer with you that I said that night. Because when I went home that night, I was in a place I didn't know who I was praying to, what I was praying to. But I remember saying, God, I don't know who you are or what you are, but I don't want to drink again. Please help me stay sober. And I can tell you that each and every day that I hit my knees, I thank God for answering that prayer. And I know without a doubt that the only reason that I can stand here today in front of you is because of a loving God who's kept me sober one day at a time. And I thank him for that each and every day. I believe that this program is a God program. It's a spiritual program. I can't do it by myself. And I've proven to myself over and over through these years that, you know, that I can mess things up when I start taking control of it. I don't know about you, but boy, I can. You know, and luckily, though, I have a God of my understanding that every time I do, he's always willing to help me when I finally give up and say I can't do it. I tell people I didn't have a bit of problem with that first part of that first step. It's kind of like that second part of the first step. My life was unmanageable by me. I had some problems with that. And I have found, though, throughout the years that, you know, that I can't manage my life. I like to close with this. I always do when I share everything. It means to me that if you don't believe that Alcoholics Anonymous will work, you just try it. And if you don't believe that God will help you, you just ask him. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ralph. Before we start to hear Sally, I was remiss. I think this is important, but I forgot to tell it. My home group is the Harmony Group of Alcoholics Anonymous in Huntsville, Texas. We meet on Tuesday night at 6:30, and you're all invited. So ask me about where it is, too. And I'd like for the people that didn't tell their sobriety date in their home group maybe to tell that before we have Sally speak at the end. Ronald, you want to tell your...
Yes, January 12th of '86. I had all of me that I could stand and couldn't stand no more. I reached out for the hand of AA. Thank God. Thank God I did.
And I didn't say that my home group is the Bryan group, and that's the same Bryan group that I came into in 1949. And when I came, it was God go to it and then got away from it. Oh, all right. I said, my home group is the Brown group, and it's the same Brown group I came into in 1949. And I had gotten away from it and was going to another group, and whatever happened, it closed. And the people that were going to it just decided to give up that group. And I was in the hospital, and I heard about it, and I called my good friend, Kate, and I said, Kate, the Brown group is not in existence anymore. We've got to get that group started again. And we did, and got the same number and everything. And so that's the group I go to, the Brown group. And I told you all my sobriety date.
I haven't found it necessary to take a drink since November the 28th. Stand up. I haven't found it necessary to take a drink since November the 28th, 1975, for which I'm truly grateful. I've had the opportunity to go to AA all over the world, but I'm a member of. Please go up to the microphone. Okay, all right. I thought I was loud enough anybody could hear. All right, now I'll do it. You know, I've been to AA. I've had the good fortune to be able to go to AA all over the world, but I've been a member of the Harmony Group in Huntsville for about 18, 19 years, and I feel more comfortable there than any group I've ever been at. One thing that I think we sort of got hidebound for a while, and like the average length of sobriety in there was about 20 years. We got all these old gray beards in there, you know. So I sort of opined that I wish the group would get wetter, and it did. And so we've got all lengths of sobriety in there right now, but it's still overall there's a lot of old sobriety, there's new sobriety in between. It's a great group. Thanks. And come see us on 6:30 on Tuesday in Huntsville. Thanks.
Thank you. My name is Sally, and I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is March 23rd, 1962. My home group is the Tuesday night Chapelwood group in Houston. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, it was an answer to a prayer that I'd been asking God. Please, I don't want to live like this, and I don't want to die like this. Something's got to happen. My sobriety date, March 23rd, was the day I found Alcoholics Anonymous, but it was on January the 24th that I woke up from an 18-hour blackout. My face was split wide open, and it took 57 stitches to close my face. Afraid? Oh, I'm telling you. And not knowing exactly what happened, but having a pretty good idea. Married to husband number 3. He was an alcoholic. I was an alcoholic. And he was a Marine from World War II, had spent quite a while on Guadalcanal, and when he was drinking, he thought I was the Japanese. And, you know, as much as I know about the history books, I knew who won that war, and yet I was always willing to engage the battle. So I began to pray and ask God for help. It was about 2 weeks after that incident that I was drunk and blacked out again. And the doctor had told me, if you get another blow to your face, I can't guarantee the stitches. And he said, I'm not guaranteeing these. And so I was really, really frightened. Well, on March the 23rd, he came to from a hangover the night before, and he said, I think it's time to go to AA. He said, I'm ready to go, and if I go, you go. He thought he was having a heart attack. Actually, he was hyperventilating from his hangover, and I said, I will go anywhere. I will do anything. And so he picked up the phone. He called Alcoholics Anonymous over on 18th Street there in Corpus Christi, and they sent 2 men over to our house. And those 2 men sat there, and they spent the next 2 hours telling us their story and asking us if we could stay sober until 8 o'clock and come to that meeting. I remember distinctly saying, oh, sure, I can stay sober till 8 o'clock. I've stayed sober 2 days before. Big deal. Well, I can tell you for a fact, at 5 minutes till 8 that night, I could not drink. And at 5 or 10 minutes after 9 that night, I knew I never had to take another drink as long as I lived if I didn't want to. There was a way out. And you had shared that with me when you told me, when you read the 5th chapter of the big book. It said, if you want what we have and are willing to go to any length, then here are the steps we took. And I listened intently, and I thought, this is about God. God's in this room. And I knew that I didn't have to drink again. I felt like I belonged. I felt like I was home. My husband said when we left that night, he said, I feel like I've had a bath. I feel clean for the first time in a long time. Well, one of the things that I found in those early meetings was that you shared enough of your experience that I knew I belonged. You didn't lay out long drunkalogs, but you told me enough about your experience that I knew I was in the right place. You shared your hope and your strength, and you shared God. And I knew that there was a way out. The people held on to me. I was young. I was the youngest one in the group. And particularly the ladies reached out to me, and they wouldn't let me go. And it was so nice to have relationships with ladies because I had not had any. And it was good to see how they lived their life, how they lived a sober life, how they practiced their program. At about 11 and a half months into this program, my husband started to drink again, and the fun began. And he wanted me to drink again. And I knew that if, I drank again, I was dead. And so the gentleman that was in our program there was head of the Council on Alcoholism. And he said, I need somebody down at my office to come work. Would you come work at least half a day with me? And he knew I needed, something to do during the daylight hours. So I went to work down at the council, and I worked there for the first 2.5 years of my sobriety. It was right at the end of that sobriety that my daughter was born, and was about 3 years after that, my husband left because I wasn't any fun anymore. I wanted to stay home. I wanted to be a wife. I wanted to be a mother. I wanted to go to church. I wanted to hang out with you folks. I wanted to read the big book. I wanted to read the big book. I just wasn't any fun, and so he left. And wasn't long after that. That was husband number 3. I did tell you that. What I forgot to tell you, too, was that when husband number 3 and I had our first years of marriage and I wanted to have a big party, he said, what's so wonderful about 1 year? I said, well, actually, I can add the first 2 together and not come up with a year. 6 months and 4 months doesn't make a year. So my record was kind of interesting. I see Via's sitting over here laughing and smiling at me. And so, anyway, it wasn't long after that someone said, oh, I have someone I want to introduce you to. Well, husband number 3 had 2 little boys. It was instant family, and I wanted family so bad. So when he left, I stayed friends with the little boys. But when husband number 4 showed up, he had 6 daughters. So I really had instant family. But Oh, he did have a little drinking problem, but by then I knew, that I could fix it. All I had to do was put my good AA program on him and things would be right. What I discovered is that this is a journey, and all the decisions we make as we get sober aren't always, at least for me, I'm speaking for myself, all the decisions I made were not the greatest decisions, but based on the information that I had at the time, they seemed like the logical thing to do to me. And I've often said when I got here, I didn't have any answers. I didn't even know what the questions were. Unfortunately, over the years, you've shared the questions and the answers with me, so that I've known there's no such thing, no situation so bad that I have to drink again. I was listening to a radio program the other day, and I heard something that really struck a chord with me. And it said, just remember when you're on the train and it's going through that dark, dark tunnel and you're afraid, you don't get off of the train. You trust the engineer. And so it is that God's been my engineer, and no matter all the decisions that I've made in sobriety that haven't been the very best decisions, I've trusted God as my engineer. I haven't jumped ship. I haven't found need to go drink again. What I found I needed to do was stay with sober people. I needed to go to meetings. I needed to be involved in service work. I've been involved in some conventions. I've been involved in my intergroup there in Houston, which is one of my favorite places of all, because of the work they do in intergroup. They keep us all together. They keep our books and our literature. And to me, one of the most important things, and I think I put it at the top of the list, they man those telephones. They're there when that alcoholic calls in the nighttime, and they don't know where to go or what to do. Most everybody can find that number, and they can call. And so I'm a big supporter of intergroup. I'm very involved with that. I don't do a great deal of work with young, new sobriety because I haven't had a lot of exposure lately to that. But what I do get to do is work with young women who 8, 9, 10 years sober are hitting those bumps in the road and they're saying, oh, is this sobriety? Yeah, this is sobriety. This is life. This is life on life's terms. And this is what the big book says. This is what you do. You pick out the steps, you follow the steps, you go to meetings, you hang out with sober people. And it's been an awesome journey. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I think if this kind of life is what you want, then you're in the right place. When I walk into a room with people like this, I feel like I've met some more members of my family, because you have been family to me. I always felt like the outsider in my family of origin. One of the things that happened to me in sobriety was that I lost my oldest brother to this disease. He died from his alcoholism, 56 years old, talented musician, had a doctorate's degree. And I couldn't understand why. If he was so smart, could he not get it? And smart's not what this is all about at all, because a lot of smart people die from our disease. And I'm always intrigued when I watch what happens with people's lives when they get sober and they get turned around, the incredible, incredible talent that we have. And what we have to share with the people out there. We have an incredible amount of talent. We have a love for people that a lot of people don't know how to love like we do, because we've been there and we understand at a level that some folks just don't understand because of our experience. And it says in our big book that we're an unlikely group. We wouldn't have gotten together for any other reason other than for our alcoholism. And we stick together because we have a common solution. And we're here. What is that saying that we have? When anyone, anywhere reaches out for help, I want the hand of Alcoholics Anonymous to always be there. And for that, I'm responsible. And so it is, I stay involved. I stay sober. And most all of the time, I stay happy. And I will say that I meet God in these rooms. When I look at the faces around me, I see the face of God. I see his handiwork, and I see the gift that he's given each of us, and that is the opportunity to live a sober life. And I thank you for being here, and I love each one of you. Thanks.
Great afternoon. What a privilege. I'd like for everybody that has 20 years or more to stand up, please.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.